In this video, I am going to show you how you can create a survey by importing the survey structure from an Excel file. The reason that you would like to do this is because you can create a survey and then save it as a template that later you can modify in Excel to create variations on the original survey. This technique is typically faster than creating the surveys by duplicating the surveys in the web UI and modifying the survey using the user interface. To show you how this is done, the first thing that I'm going to do is look at the questions inside a survey. I'm going to be using a survey called My Demo, and when I edit the questions, I can see that there is an option called Export that allows me to export the survey structure in an Excel file. The Excel file generated has the format that you can see in your screen. It has multiple columns, each representing a different attribute of an object in a questionnaire. Every row is an object in a questionnaire. Column A, type, specifies the type of object in the questionnaire. When the type is section, then this row is representing the information for a section, and every question that is underneath this row belongs to that section. Questions inside a questionnaire are of type Q underscore and the type of question. They can be text, integers, booleans, multi-choices, and so on. The identifier of a question or an object is a unique identifier that has to be unique in the entire Excel file. If you have two objects that have the same identifier, then Crystal Surveys will give you an error. Description, hint, and tooltip are the description, the hint, and the tooltip for those objects that require them. The is mandatory column specifies whether the object is going to be mandatory when filling out the data. Obviously, this is only relevant for questions. If you want to make the question mandatory, then all you need to do is enter an X in this particular cell. For those questions that are text-based or dates that have a size, the size column will specify the size of the actual field in the display. It can be a big field, a medium field, or a small field. The show numbering column is going to specify whether Crystal Surveys should number the questions automatically. The show label column is specifying whether Crystal Surveys should show the label if the question is inside a table. When the question is of type multi-choice, then the column called choices is going to show all the options for the multi-choice. Multi-choice questions are lists. In this case, the list has 4 options. They're all separated by vertical bars, and each option has 2 parts separated by a colon. The left-hand side specifies the ID of the option, and the right-hand side specifies the text that Crystal Surveys will display when the user selects that option. The left-hand side does not need to be a number. For example, on this multi-choice question, there are several options. The first one has an ID of none and a text of no education. When the users enter data, when they select no education, the system will store the value none in the database. Let me go back to the beginning, and I will find that in row 12 I have a object of type conditional. This is a conditional constraint that is going to be either hiding or showing questions depending on the evaluation of an expression. What is specified on the identifier cell is the question that will trigger the evaluation of this conditional. This means that the expression that will show or hide questions will only be triggered when the question QSmoke is modified in the questionnaire. The actual expression that will be evaluated is specified under the expression column. In this case, QSmoke equals false. So, when QSmoke is equal to false, then the survey will either show or hide questions depending on what is entered in one of these two columns, to show or to hide. What this constraint is telling me is that when the expression QSmoke equals false is satisfied, then Crystal Surveys is going to hide the questions QHSmoke and QReasonSmoke. Similarly, if I look at row 14, this constraint is telling me that when this expression is satisfied, then QReasonSmoke other will be shown. This expression is telling me that when the fourth option of the QReasonSmoke multi-choice is selected and QSmoke equals true, then the QReasonSmoke other question will be shown. Please note that it is the fourth option inside QReasonSmoke because multi-choice questions are numbered from 0. So it is 0, 1, 2, and 3. If I go back to the beginning of my Excel spreadsheet, I can see that row 13 has a type constraint. Constraints are those rules that are evaluated by Crystal Surveys, and if they evaluate to false, then an error message or a warning is displayed and presented to the user. Like conditionals, constraints are triggered when the question that is identified with the identifier inside the identifier cell is modified. So when the users have entered data in the QHSmoke question, then this constraint will be evaluated. The constraint, like in conditionals, is specified in the expression column. The column constraint type is specifying what type of constraint this is, and there are three types of constraints: hard, weak, and flexible. When the constraint fails, an error message is presented to the user, and this error message is specified on the onFail message column. If I go back to the beginning of my definition and I scroll down, I can see that there are other types of questions that are similar to the ones that we've seen, like for example QDecimal, and QDecimal is mainly a decimal number, or Q multiple choice inclusive is a question that has a list of options where the user can select multiple items in that particular question. To modify the structure using Excel, all you need to do is add or insert or delete elements in the cell table. For example, I have two questions that are: do you smoke, and do you drink? And I'm going to add a third question that says, do you gamble? And I'm going to do that by selecting the row that says, do you drink? And copying it and simply changing the identifier so that it's unique, and changing the description so that it corresponds to the question. Once I have completed the modifications on my Excel definition, I can save it, and I can go back to Crypto Surveys, and I can create a new survey, which I'm going to call my demo 2, and I'm going to use the select file button to select the survey definition that I just modified, and then click on the import button that is underneath the select file button. This action loads the entire definition from the Excel spreadsheet, and if I scroll down, I can save my questionnaire, my survey, and if I edit the questions, I can see that in the Your Health section, I have now 3 questions: do you smoke, do you drink, and do you gamble? And this is how you use the export and import functions within the survey structure to very efficiently create variations on a survey.